first say a couple of thank yous. Thanks to Vanessa for being our fearless leader and always knowing what's going on. Thanks to my family and friends for coming. Thanks to my former professors, Patricia and Jim, for being here. And thanks to Gretchen for introducing me to Trackle. I'm just gonna start with a few poems that I'm not gonna explain, and then I'll give some explanation for the next set. Detonate. There were always things to tell you. The way it would be if we buttoned any particular button. How I would spend the year holding back a sneeze. How the orange puckered in the drawer a shriveled bomb. We wanted everything, bodies gabled or bent over with joy. It was easy to forget the wires geometried through the house, the dark powder along the baseboards. I looked ahead and saw only you, a bright suture in a lined palm. This poem is called How I've Been Crushed. You wanted proof of how he'd hooked you. Something you could point to and say, look, here is how I've been crushed. You want to be cunning to make his hairs stand on end. You want to keep his ribs in a box buried under the hedge, to wait and see what might grow there. You want to come back years later, just to see what had happened. This is called The Field That Resists Naming. You are taking a class in indifference. You want to be able to ignore his hands when they are not on your waist. You carry your heart wrapped in waterproof cloth. You can think of little else, press yourself against walls. You have been acutely aware of nerve endings for weeks. You are trying to be enough. A bramble in his side, a night moth, the field that resists naming. This is called Tell Him the World. Your mother tells it like it is, blue with hints of taupe. You have a lot of questions. You pick at them, serve them to your guests on toast. The edges of your face begin to crumple. You scrabble for something you dropped on the lawn. A field cannot hold all you've lost. Carmine powder in the sheets, a length of twine fraying around your ankle. Your feet are caked in the wake's emissions. In a certain light, they almost sparkle. The air through the window has begun to change, rubber tires and hydrangeas. You tell him the world has left you stark, blushing in the bleached grass. And I'm going to read a few poems about Georg Trakl now, who is a German poet who died during World War I. And these poems are, I'm sort of thinking of them as letters between Georg and his sister Gret. This is called Some Elaborate. Brother, you began to leave me early, chose to offer yourself to the ground beneath horses and trains, refused to focus on my face, this world of water too murky to cleanly navigate. You leave me every day in small ways, and I imagine your organs must be eroding, your skin the only shoreline I want to visit, and time a limit refused again and again. And I am bursting, my fist a hot planet, my pelvis a meadow, and I will be the bell, a war ending, our hearts some elaborate pulley system, a line long enough to stretch across countries. I am still hostage to your absence, filling and filling a bucket. Even the most familiar city, a wilderness I don't recognize, a waterline I keep expecting will change. This is called Spin. Word of your death comes on a Sunday, your name there on the letter, Trakl in careful lettering. The city has begun to unravel into dark filaments, your name a rope drawn taut. I discover your loss in new places, a bruised plum, tender globe, hoofprint filled with water. Sound becomes pinched, each name that isn't yours crumbling on my tongue. Some nights you visit me in a dream, your face pale and drawn. We speak quietly and sit with our hands crossed. You show me a bullet you've pulled from another man's chest. It sits on the table between us, heavy as though it holds the whole war. Outside the window, men strap dead horses to the carousel. They spin and spin and spin. This is called Gret Asks the Hard Question. I only exist in the word sister, spun through white fields until I'm invisible to anyone who doesn't know I'm there. I tell you my body is a hollow, a fence, how there are so many colors I'll never see. Let me be refracted as you see best, woman with blue eyebrows, the smallest deer. Is it wrong? I know your heart is a cathedral. Sometimes you visit me and your hands become birds, unfurl the entire forest. And this is the last trochel poem I'll read. It's called Wild Boat. Your presence demanded my tongue, and so I made my body an armory, took to lying under the floorboards. My heart became a wild boat, in a storm, in a haze, in an hour, and its anchor grew beneath me. I imagined it taking root on the seabed, twined around a blind fish or scarred with kelp. It became harder to leave the room, and I stared at the chipped tile to pass the time. Your coat was strung on a line in the bathroom, and so I couldn't ignore it. It remained true that you died in a bed in Poland and that I hid from your death. It was worse than all the other facts. And this poem is about Amelia Earhart because my sister asked me to read it. So this is called For the Grand Adventure, and it begins with an epigraph from Miklos Radnati. This is how sadness still gives me to the sky. What was it about the sky that lit you? The split of the horizon, lapis lazuli you would have traveled the continents to find, to pencil into the sky. I think it was both escape and attack, the hedgehog curling in on itself. There weren't many quiet places left on Earth, so many trees looming, the flash of cameras, and you, a woman who only wanted the sky. How far could you let anyone into your heart? You must have known in the end it would be just you and something vast opening, miles and miles of empty paradise. How small the cypress must have looked from above. And this poem is called Snow White's Heart, and it's based on the Grimm's fairy tale version. Mother, I have mapped the forest, can live on that apple for months. The light is speckled, and I am lost in a daughter's usual ways. All of the trees are brittle and slanted, afraid to ask for my heart. What did you imagine it would feel like on your tongue? Soft, a finger pressed into an open palm? Would it bring you luck? Black-eyed pea, pomegranate seed. You are not the first to envy splendor, and I have learned by now to swallow poison. It was hard to leave some comforts behind. Unfiltered sunlight, clean linen, the lesser organs. I will leave everything else. Pancreas, knees, appendix, but my heart, I plan to keep it. This poem is called What Comes. It is summer, and you have dressed differently. The birds are calling again for lost supper. Try to remember where you hid the roast, carrots and rutabagas in the Dutch oven. You linger over chopped vegetables. How sinister to create any more heat, to ignore an open window. In this light, you can't help but feel as though nothing has ever been denied you, as though the fabric of your skirt was quickly mended. It is summer and you don't need a sweater. And I will just read a couple more poems. This is called Church Hipbone. I would be ready if given the signal. willing to go to the mat for this feeling in the dark. You are the church, the hipbone, the entire ocean. That old pull in the throat, not wanting to leave the room for days. You are mostly something bent, fashioned in fits at night, the memory of your arm filling a sleeve. A blue whale's heart is the size of a small car, and I am finding it hard to imagine anyone who would not be moved to think of that vehicle. And I want to drive fast into your mouth, leave nothing on the table. You are a ridge inside of me, hurt spot continually worried, thumb brushed against collarbone until it begins to crumble. Which parts of this belong to me? Just the blossoming or the tongued flat skin? Relief when you appear. If I were fastened to any question, hands laced together. And I'll just read one more poem. This is called Incantar E. In another universe, there is a room where we sleep like planks. Sawdust drifts from the bedding, an apple in the mouth of the wounded. There are 9 parts to this story, and a snake that takes its time with my throat. Sinew to sinew is penance for wreckage, for illicit tincture. Bone to bone is how I say, let me live in your mouth. Let me sleep in your knee socket. I'm trying to pin something intangible to my shirt sleeves. Pop it, do you feel any particular warmth? I've left you stuck in the chimney. The amulet could be anything. It's not a sign of my lessening. Someone has replaced your heart with raw meat, that delicacy. I'm working on a trick where I come across sated, where I don't remember how to be ravenous. Thank you.